and welcome to the Art of Being Human. I think today, since last time I talked about control and not allowing people to control you and not allowing yourself to be manipulated by somebody else who's trying to make you feel guilty if you don't do exactly what they want, I want to go into how to handle intense emotions because we have them. You know, people think that we're rational and they like to be proud and say, oh, I'm so rational and I solve problems and I don't think things emotionally. I just take the facts as they are and I handle the facts the way that they are, and I'm a very rational person. And most people do have an element of that. Some people more than others. I had a college professor, no matter what happened, he was never bothered. He analyzed the situation. He would tell me how he thought it was going to be resolved, and just nothing ever bothered him. And I used to admire him so much because I was a person who would get angry, and I would have my times when I would think, gee, I would have questions about things and I would feel more emotional about things. But that's the way most of us are. Most of us are not so intellectual as we think we are. We do rationalize. We do think things through in a rational kind of way, but we also experience an amount of emotions. Sometimes these emotions get to be really intense. And they can. If you're invested in something, in the care of children, in the care of animals, and you're watching television and they're talking about abuse, or somebody did this to a child or that to an animal, you can get so angry you just want to kick that television set. And you just sometimes look away. You can't stand to even look at it because we are emotionally based. And that's a good thing, too. It's a good thing because if we're going to be supporting causes that are worthy, if we're going to live our lives in a way that's a worthy way in which people are helped, well, we need to get emotional about things. We need to get emotional about the right things. You know, the Bible says, be angry, but sin not. It's all right to get angry when you need to be angry. Child abuse, drug use, people manipulating each other, people injuring each other, people not caring and doing things, stealing from other people. These are things that we should be getting angry about. Now, how do you handle the intense anger? A lot of that intense anger will have to do with yourself in terms of something has happened to you and you are really angry about it and you don't know what to do. You need to reduce the anger level so you can think more rationally, because the anger level can get so high that you start to work on impulse. You start to behave on impulse, and when you do that, your impulses may not get you anywhere. They express your anger, but at the same time they don't get you anywhere in terms of what you want to accomplish. So you have to be able to let go of that anger so that you can think more rationally and come to rational decisions in terms of what to do. But what I want to focus on are these intense emotions. First of all, you have to validate your own emotions. If you are angry, or if you're depressed, or if you're nervous, or if you're having a lot of anxiety, whatever the emotion is, you need to validate that. When I say validate, I mean you need to admit to it. Now, you don't have to tell the whole world about it, but you have to acknowledge it, at least to yourself, and maybe to your spouse or a few friends. In order to get that out of your system, you need to acknowledge that. That's what it means to validate. You're not telling yourself that your emotions are right and wrong. Your emotions, as a general rule, are not right or wrong. They're just emotions. They're just the way that you respond to things. They're not even your true character. They can become your true character if you act on them and you find yourself doing things that probably you shouldn't do. So if you react to them, they can become a part of your character. But for the most part, our emotions are transitory. They come, they go, and they're not horrible, they're not bad, they're not good, but they may be very uncomfortable. And so therefore, we need to know how to handle them. Validating them will just acknowledge to yourself and to anyone who you need to that you're having these emotions. When you validate them, when you talk about them, when you acknowledge them, and you don't really have to talk about them all that much unless for some reason you need to or want to. But when you acknowledge that you're not feeling good, it tends to take the steam out of it. It tends to lessen the power of it. You know, if I got angry and I went out and I acted upon my anger without stopping and thinking about it and venting it, I might end up by doing some pretty inappropriate things. And we all have that mindset where if somebody hurts us, we're going to hurt them back. And what can we do to hurt them? That's a part of the human condition. So we have to understand that it's a part of the human condition, but you want to lessen that. You're just being a human. That's what you're being. And it's okay to be a human. That's the way God created you to be. But you have to lessen the intense emotions so you can work with them. So you can work with them and accomplish something. So acknowledge your feelings, and your feelings will be less intense. Even your anxiety. If you're very, very nervous about something, acknowledge that you're highly anxious. This is making me nervous. I don't feel good. I don't know what to do. I'm getting very nervous about this. Acknowledge that, and the anxiety will lessen. It tends to lessen. Now, it may not go away completely, but if you acknowledge it, it has less intensity. It's almost, and I know I talked about this once before, but it's almost like the body is trying to get you to acknowledge the state that it's in, because emotions are not just feelings, they're also states of being. And when you feel a certain way, and when you're angry or upset, your body is in a different kind of mode than it is if you're not angry and upset. So therefore, it lessens it for you to acknowledge it. If you say, no, I'm not angry, everything's all right, I'll live my life as normal, that anger gets turned inward. And when the anger gets turned inward, it becomes depression. A lot of the people who are depressed that I've seen have anger issues that have never been resolved. If you do not resolve the issues that you have, the emotional issues that you have, all of these emotions get turned into your system, and then you end up with physiological responses, ulcers, migraines, nervousness, and all of that. If you acknowledge what you're dealing with and deal with it, and kind of lessen it, then it gets resolved, and then you don't have a lot of anxiety as a result. It is true, every emotion has to be expressed. And if it's expressed, and there are different ways of doing this. There are healthy and unhealthy ways to express emotion, but if the emotion is expressed, then the emotion gets less and less intense. Then it will have less an effect upon your body, and you will be healthier. The only thing is, if you express that emotion and you do it in an unhealthy kind of way, then what's going to happen is that you're going to hurt yourself by it, or you're going to hurt somebody else by it, or you're going to become ill by it. So you have to we will get into inward and outward aggression as we go along here. So acknowledge and validate your emotions. Your body does not have to fight for you to recognize the state that it's in, and then that seems to lessen the emotions. And don't trust your emotions as being completely real. We overreact to a lot of things, and we do it because of what we're invested in. If I'm invested in taking care of animals, and I understand that an animal is being abused, I'm out to get the person who abused the animal. I'm out to rescue the animal, and that's a good thing. But if we can lessen the emotions, our behavior becomes much more appropriate, and we don't do something that we wish later that we hadn't done. But we also tend to overestimate our emotions. Our emotions can kick into high gear, and we just assume that everything that our emotions are telling us is true. And we sometimes only have one side of a picture. And we can't allow our emotions to conquer us. We have to work with our emotions to lessen them. So we have to realize that some things that we believe are true may be exaggerated. We may be exaggerating it according to our own emotions. Somebody else may be exaggerating it and telling us about it, and we kind of catch the fever, you might say. So some things that we get so emotional about may have two sides to the picture, or maybe even more more than two sides to the picture, and we need to be really accurate in what we know, and then choose. We can't choose our emotions, but before we let our emotions grab us and cause us to do things that are bad, because we may have a distorted impression. I can't think right now of a good example of that. But I know that some people, well, I'll give you an example. A friend of mine a few years ago came to me in an agitated state. She was very upset. Somehow she had learned that all of the planets in our solar system were in a row, and that only happened every few thousand years, and it predicted the destruction of the earth. I know this sounds a little wild, but it was on that order. I don't have it exactly right because it happened a long time ago, and she has since passed on. But she was sure the world was going to come to an end, and she was so excited, and she was so nervous, and she was so upset about that. She came to me and said, what are we going to do? If this happens the way that the scientists thought it was going to happen, and the planets got in a row, and all of the magnification of the planets intertwined, I don't know exactly what it was that she thought, but she thought it was going to be very bad for the human race, and somehow the earth would be destroyed by it. And there was a lot of talk about that. It was in the news, It wasn't like she was conjuring up all of this stuff in her mind, and she was just so nervous about it. And so I sat her down and I talked with her about it, and I said, first of all, nobody knows what's going to happen if they do whatever it is they were going to do. No one knows what's going to happen. It may be as bad as we think, but it may not be as bad as we think. We don't have the knowledge to be able to predict. The second thing I said is, the world is at some point going to come to an end, but when it comes to an end, it's going to come to an end the way that God has planned for it to. No one can shortchange what God is going to do. What God is going to do, whatever his plans are, they're going to be carried out. We don't have to worry about his plans. He'll take care of his own plans. And as it worked out, she was fine. She got more relaxed. She wasn't so emotional, and nothing happened. I don't know how many times I've read news articles that this asteroid is going to land on Earth and it's going to hit a city and we're going to lose millions of people. It's never happened. I'm not saying it won't at some point. I'm a realist too. But sometimes we just exaggerate the things that we're afraid of, and we exaggerate them to the point where we're much more emotional than we need to be, and somehow we need to look at all aspects of what's going on and decide, look, I can't do anything about it, therefore I'm not going to worry about it. I'm going to place it in God's hands, and he's going to take care of it. And that's just the way it is. So don't trust your symptoms, your anger symptoms, your emotions as totally being accurate, because they may not be. They may be exaggerated, they may be skewed, partly due to your own fear, partly due to what you're hearing about similar things from other people, and their emotions can be skewed, partly due to their fear. And so when you get a lot of people inputting a lot of data to you, and they're all basing it on how they feel, then that's going to affect the way that you feel, and it becomes contagious. Somebody told me that paranoia is contagious. Paranoia is contagious. If somebody comes to you and they're paranoid about something, it's easy to pick that up and become somewhat paranoid about it itself. This is where your rational mind should take over. Let's take a look at this and see what this really is. So you may be having more intense emotions than you need to have, and the information that you have may be somewhat distorted. So don't define yourself according to your symptoms. The other thing you can do is you can use self-talk. Now, what is self-talk? It's when you talk to yourself as if you had a coach. I've counseled many people over the years, and once in a while somebody will say to me, when I got upset, I pretended you were here. And I talked to myself and told myself the things that I thought you would say if you were here. And I calmed myself down that way. And so it's talking to yourself, self-talk. It can be a very potent therapeutic tool, because you can tell yourself, I'm not going to feel this way. I don't want to feel this way. I'd like to put an end to it. But the thing is, you have to acknowledge that you do feel this way. That lessens the emotions, and then you can go on from there and use self-talk and say, these horrible things have not happened. These horrible things may not happen. If I believe everything I hear, I'm going to be emotional. I need to take a break from it. You know, if there is a disaster, the television crews are right on it, and they talk about it, and they need to, and they have to, and I get that. But then you hear about it all day long. And they repeat it all day long, and they try to get more information all day long. And it is true, there's lots of bad things that happen, but if you listen to it all the time, I can remember when there was a war going on. It was in Afghanistan, I think, and I was driving in my car. I was listening to PBS radio. And that's about the only time I ever listen to the radio is when I'm driving. But at any rate, I was driving, and they covered the war, and it was like a 2.5-hour drive, and all I heard was war statistics over and over and over again. And I thought to myself, should I even be listening to this all the time? Yes, I need to have the news. Yes, I need to know what's going on. Once I know, do I have to rehearse it? Do I have to listen to it all the rest of the day, or however long I'm driving, simply because it's all they're covering? You know, there's life to be lived, and I'm sorry for all the horrible things that happen, but should I personally be reliving that? Sometimes we relive and rehearse the problems we have. We go to the doctor, there's a lump, and he doesn't know whether it's cancer. By the end of the day, we're convinced we have cancer because we have thought about it all day long. It's occupied our brain all day long, and as you think about it more and more, it gets more intense, it gets more stronger, and then what happens is that it's like a mountain where it started off as being a little hill. And so sometimes you need to watch yourself, because you know what kind of a person you are. Are you an emotional type? Do you get really intensely involved in things, or are you more rational? Some people are more rational than others. And if you are finding that you're getting too emotional over something and you're rehearsing it, you're thinking about it all the time, try to put a stop to that. Think in terms of something else. Give yourself a break, because you don't want to have that intense emotion all the time. It's not good for you, and that's a real problem, because it really is not good for you. And so it's just something I'm presenting for you to think about. Now, we need to express every emotion, otherwise the emotion is turned inward. And so we do have inward aggression and we have outward aggression. So what's the difference? If I have a problem, and I'm thinking about it, and not doing anything about it, maybe not talking about it, just keeping it within myself, it develops its own pattern of existence, and sometimes it can become my own reality. And what I'm saying for me is equally true of you. If you have a problem and you're thinking about it, and you're thinking about it over and over and over again, then all of your perceptions are based upon what you have just told your brain. Now, the brain is an organ, and what you think is input in the brain. It's a little bit like a computer in this regard, but you assume that what's in your brain is truthful and so forth. And if you just think about that all the time, then what's going to happen is you're going to believe what you have told your brain. Whether it's true or not doesn't matter. The fact is, you've told your brain you've got cancer. You've told your brain you're going to flunk the course. You've told your brain you're going to lose your job. And how does the brain respond? The brain responds like it's already happened. If I go into a test that I'm taking in a college class and say, I know I'm going to fail this, I've studied, but I just don't understand it, I think I'm going to fail it, what does your brain do? You failed the test. That's the message you gave it. That's the message that it understands, and that becomes truth for you because that's what you've told it. And if it becomes truth for you, that's what you're going to believe, and that's what you're going to act upon. So you need to change what you're telling your brain. I think I'll pass it because I've studied. I may not get the highest grade, but I think I'll be okay. What does your brain assume? I'll be okay because I've studied, I'll be okay. So whatever you're thinking, whatever your emotions are putting in the brain assumes to be true. And then you get the emotions that you would have if it's true because the brain is assuming it's true. I know this is getting a little complex, but you stop to think about it. If you think about a health problem and you think you're going to die, but you don't know for sure, but I think I've got cancer, I'm not sure, but I may have cancer, then as far as you know, you've got cancer. And your brain, what does it do? You've got cancer, you're going to die. And then you get fears, all kinds of fears. But if you think, I may have cancer, but it's treatable, not having cancer isn't necessarily a death sentence. People do beat it out. I'll be okay. That's what your brain is going to assume. So your brain is responding to what you are thinking. And then your brain is assuming as true what you're thinking. And what happens is you assume the emotions that you have that your brain thinks is true. And your emotions go right along with it. To change your emotions, you may have to change your thinking. And when you change your thinking, then your thinking will be much more realistic. So it gets complicated, but these are the things that I deal with people because I deal with people who are anxious most of the time, nervous most of the time, and I want to try to develop things that they can do to help themselves to not feel as intensely as they do. There are ways of handling intense emotions, and I haven't quite finished with this, but we are running out of time. I don't want to go much further with this. If you have questions or comments, please contact me at the studio, and I can answer your comments on the air. So at any rate, I'm going to close it here. We'll continue with this next time. Please join me then.